Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I am going through how I created this latest little painting of a little kid, and I'm using the Gamblin Reclaimed Earth oil colors, and it's a set of 3 colors that are brown ochre, rust red, and iron violet. I really wanted to use these 3 colors because I love earth colors, and these pigments are also reclaimed from waters tainted by iron released into mines. So I bought these 3 colors because I'm always looking for ways to make my paintings more sustainable to the environment. As someone who deeply cares about these things, I feel that maybe I should try and incorporate it into my painting routine, and I'll see how these pigments work in this painting. And I just wanted to put it out there that this is not a sponsored video. Now, I just like to experiment a lot and try to find new things. So I started off with a wash of rust red, and it's almost like a slightly more red and deeper version of burnt sienna. So it's a great color to start off with. I always try to establish my darks early on in the beginning. So I went in with a mix of indigo and burnt umber just to make sure that my darks really popped against the warmth of the fox's fur. Speaking of which, the fox's fur is really warm. There's a lot of red ochre, there's a lot of cadmium orange that I'm using, and there's also a lot of yellows, so I wanted something to contrast with that. And instead of just going for a pure black, I went with indigo over here for any blacks, and if I needed to deepen it and make it less blue, I added some burnt umber into it. But for the eye and a lot of the shadow, I'm really just using a lot of indigo in there to really push the complementary nature of it against the warm colors of the fox. There are a lot of ways to paint fur. You can paint every individual hair, which takes a lot of work, and you can also paint by giving a suggestion. However you choose to do it, as long as you get the values right, you really don't have to worry about anything else. I'm going in and adding a lot of orange to the fur. In this case, I'm using cadmium orange, and wherever I want to tone down the orangeness, where I want it to read a little bit more muted, I add a little bit of the iron violet and the brown ochre. I find that it keeps it from becoming just too orange and really helps in changing the values and how the paint reads. I've also learned by now that if I don't add context early enough to the painting, I probably will get lost down the road. Now, I'm sure I'm going to make this mistake in later paintings, but I'm already establishing somewhat of a background in my painting so that I know what I want to do and I know how the colors are going to relate to each other. I wanted something that was green, something to really play off the warm colors and that would bring out the shadows as well. So I chose the green for that reason. And because I wanted variation even in the background, I don't want it to be green, in your face green throughout. There are places where I wanted to mute the green and I used the iron violet, and I really like that shade. It's a great shade to mute things down with. In fact, I use it a lot in the shadows as well, where I want to make the shadows a little bit lighter and a little less prominent. I push in a lot of the iron violet to tone down the darkness of the shadows. And I'm just building upon what I have. So I'm adding a little bit more iron red where I need to add more depth to the color, tone down the darkness or even tone down the orange. Because I have areas where I have established quite a lot of information and there's a lot of paint, there are layers of thin paint, I'm going on top and adding thicker layers of paint that will hold my brushstroke much more. And that's where I'm giving a suggestion of fur. You can choose to do a lot of individual hairs, but I'm very lazy. The more I paint, the less work I want to actually do to get to my final result. And I like it a little bit wild. I mean, this fox is not a tame fox, so I want him to have a little bit of the wildness in him. And I feel like the thick brush strokes will really display that. I've established the values on the face of the fox, and I've given some context to the background. So I feel very confident in adding lighter colors, because just adding pure white as the light color, it's really not going to do justice to the values that are there in lighter areas. There's a lot of variation in tone and value in the shadow, and I use a lot of the iron violet in the shadow as well. And wherever I wanted to make it a little bit warmer, I added the brown ochre. Those two are really, really good shadow colors, and they really help set the base for the white fur. And now that I have the paint established over there as a base layer and most of the figure is set, I can really worry about the shape that the fur is making, the little wispy little hairs here and there that I do want to add as detail. I want the background and the fox to relate to each other as one unit rather than the foreground and the subject and the background as two separate units. And so I'm incorporating a little bit of the background into the white of the fur. I figure it reflects it anyways, so I'm pushing a little bit of the background into the white of the fur just to make it feel cohesive. I'm going in and adding a little bit of brown ochre to the shadows and really defining the shadows a little bit more so that there is just more contrast and more drama to the whole painting. And then after cleaning up my brush, I'm going into the white of the fur where I've pulled in the background and just kind of smush it and blend it into each other so that the color of the background is more part of the white. I can go back in and add more white and define it more, but I want the green peeking through here and there. And I went in with my fan brush and made some edges fuzzy and lost some edges into the background, which is a really great way of making the background and the foreground really mesh. And I'm going in with some indigo and some brown ochre to make the background a little bit more interesting and darker where I need it to be. I want every now and then a little bit of a reddish tinge to peek through in the background, and I want that to contrast with the green of the background. So I'm going in with a brighter green to really give a little bit of interest. As I develop the background more and more, I try to see how I can incorporate brown ochre and iron red into the background, just so that I have these areas of interest that just peek through here and there. When I started painting, I always cannot wait to get to this stage, which is the part where I add details. And so we are at my favorite part where I get to do all the detailed stuff in the painting. And to do that, I'm working with fairly thick paint because I've got layers of paint sitting there already. The thicker paint also allows me to really define the fur. This way I can show which direction the hair is growing and how it falls. The thicker paint also doesn't really mix with the bottom colors as much, so I can really go in and put those highlights and really deepen the shadow if I want to. Right now I'm just defining everything more. Wherever I need to go in and add a little bit more red and brown, I add the brown ochre and iron red. I'm also careful to make sure that I leave enough of the cadmium orange there so that it doesn't really feel so toned down. There needs to be a little bit of excitement, a little bit of bright color to the painting, and the cadmium orange does that. I'm going in with some burnt umber and indigo to give this handsome young man his whiskers, and I'm defining them with a small, thin paintbrush. They're a little too strong for my liking, so I'm going in and blending them with the background a little bit and defining them only here and there so that they don't really feel so bold against the rest of the figure. I'm going in and adding the final touches, the highlights, and defining the ears and finishing up the fur in them. And I'm going to add a couple of highlights here and there to define the face further. I'm using a mix of titanium white, cadmium orange, and iron red to really brighten up the face a little bit and tint the white. And after that, all that's left is for me to sign the painting and call it a day. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you are interested in those three colors, I think they're good auxiliary colors to have in your painting kit. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, and I will see you next time.